You need to have the type of relationship with the business where they understand your goals are going to be different.
Welcome to Real Leadership, the show that cuts through the clutter to spotlight leaders who make, move, and process things in the real economy. This isn't about buzzwords or theories. It's about bold decisions, solving challenges, and the strategies driving industries that matter. I'm Jim Weaver, CEO of the Owner Group. In every episode, we get real about what it takes to turn vision into action and obstacles into opportunities. Let's go. Today, we're welcoming the Chief Procurement Officer of ABM Industries, Joseph DeMarco. ABM is one of the largest providers of integrated facility services in the world, the Fortune 500 company behind the scenes keeping airports, manufacturing facilities, warehouses, stadiums, hospitals, offices clean, maintained, and running. ABM touches more than $1 billion with a B of annual spend across equipment, fleet, subcontractors, and just about everything it takes to keep those operations moving. As Chief Procurement Officer, Joe leads that effort, helping to drive value across the business every day. Joe came up in kind of a classic procurement way, purchasing agent, commodity manager, and then roles with increasing responsibility at Allstate, Zebra Technology, Baxter, Stericycle, where he rose to Vice President of Global Sourcing and Procurement. And along the way, he's built a track record that most procurement people would envy. Since joining ABM in 2023, Joe has been leading a transformation that's organizational, technological, and by his own framing, above all, relational. He's built a reputation for turning procurement into a true business partner by earning trust, influencing across the enterprise, and delivering measurable business value. That approach has earned him a spot on Procurement Magazine's top 10 procurement leaders in Chicago, and this year a seat as a judge at the Global Procurement Awards. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you, Jim. I think that was the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me. So that was incredible. Thank you.
It's all true from what I could tell. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So ABM is massive. It's a massive force behind the scenes. Maybe some of our listeners don't know who ABM is, but you're really helping to drive the real economy. So for our listeners who might not grasp the scale and scope of your operations, could you explain ABM Industries, what you do, the landscape of your industry, kind of where you sit in that landscape? Give us a big picture flyover.
Sure. So we are, if you've ever walked into, a clean, comfortable, well-run building, whether it's airport, office tower, school, anything like that. There's a good chance that we're behind the scenes making that happen. So we are, at our core, a facility services company, and we, provide solutions top to bottom. Whether that's janitorial, engineering, infrastructure, we do it all. And one of the things that's really interesting about our business is, or I guess I would say the differentiator is, plenty of people you could call, hey, I need help with my facilities, whatever it might be. We self-perform the vast majority of our work. So if a client were to, and we have over 20,000 of them, by the way, if a client were to come to us and say, hey, we want you to take this over, top to bottom, left, right, and center, we would self-perform typically anywhere from 70 to 85% of that work. So, you think about just what that means from an accountability standpoint and having a partner that you can go to that's actually responsible for the work. That's, one big piece that sets us apart.
What do you mean by infrastructure?
When I think about, take data centers as an example, that's a space that we participate in, right? So we would perform maintenance, on pieces of equipment, testing from a battery standpoint, but we also have a technical solutions business that would focus on, power redundancy, could be microgrid solutions, EV charging installations. So, it's kind of funny, like you'll be at an airport and you'll see someone with, an ABM branded, piece of clothing and maybe they're doing janitorial work or whatever it might be, but go to a, completely different environment and we're, installing, like I said, EV chargers and performing, scheduled maintenance on equipment in, the bellies of these buildings and things like that. So it's just such a gamut of services that we provide, which frankly is one of the things that drew me to the business.
The business has been around since 1909. right? And it obviously has evolved a lot over the past 110 years or 15, I guess. ABM's current kind of overarching strategy is called Elevate, and that launched in 2021. It seems like that is you've gone through some pretty aggressive evolution in the last 5 years with heavy investments into data and technology. Tell us about the Elevate strategy.
Yeah. So I think what's really powerful about it is we are such a client-focused and relationship-based organization that what we do is, you look at technology and things that support the things that we do. There was a point in time, this before I joined the organization, but where we said, how do we take that, call it 115 years of experience, and really bring it into something that our clients can feel and touch and feel and kind of experience that improvement. So when you talk about Elevate, there's so many pieces of it, but really I would say in plain language, there's a lot of technology work there, whether it's from ERP standpoint, some of the things that we do within procurement from our, purchasing system and things like that. There's a ton of work happening there to kind of transform the business and help us operate in a way, the way we talk about it internally is with some of the data and the systems and, all of that we're investing in. If we walk out of a client presentation, whoever is walking in after us and has to follow that based on all the information that we shared and have access to, they're going to have a rough time. So, and a lot of that comes from, our CEO who's been in this business a long time. And he is hyper focused on what's next. How do we deliver for our clients? How do we make sure 20,000 turns into 30,000 and 40,000 and so on and so forth?
Modernization, integration, infrastructure, AI readiness. Onin Technology helps industrial IT leaders build momentum without the resume bloat or vendor babysitting. We deliver talent vetted by real subject matter experts, scoped project teams built for results, and consulting from tech leaders who've done the work. Contract to hire, direct hire, or statement of work, we do what fits. Ready to move? So are we. Visit onintechnology.com.
I read you're in 57% of the Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah.
Man, that's a dominant market position. That's impressive. All right. So you joined in 2023. What did you walk into and what was the mandate when you took the helm?
You kind of have to look back to the role I was in previously. So with Stericycle, that was a kind of building a procurement function. I would say not from scratch. That's not a fair way to say it, but it was very focused on kind of tactical, business cards, office supplies, things like that, and some of those categories. And we wanted to turn that into a center-led, world-class procurement organization, right, with people, process, and technology to enable all of that. So we, spent 6 years doing exactly that. There was ERP work that came with that, systems, procure to pay, all those sorts of things. And so it came to kind of I'd been there for 6 years and it was kind of evaluating what to do next. Is there something different that I do within the business? Is it maybe I go do, another, I don't want to say project, but is there more work like this out there? And you kind of, it's funny. You don't think, especially with something as special as that opportunity was, like you don't just think, oh, there's more of these out there, right? You just think like this was a once in a lifetime thing. This was fantastic. Got to meet great people, built a great team. Like you just, I don't know, maybe others see it differently, but for me, it just kind of felt like, yeah, how do you find something like this? And so when ABM called, it almost, and I don't want to oversimplify or whatever, but it almost kind of felt like it was, hey, we want you to come do the same thing you just did, right? But it was very similar. It was, we've got a team that is performing, but we're making a lot of investments, and we want to get to the point where, we want center-led, world-class procurement that operates well with our stakeholders and partners with the business. And I think that's the big piece that's hard to replicate. So in a business like ours, our stakeholders are in the field, right? Frontline. They're supporting clients. They're not necessarily sitting behind desks, and that sort of thing. So being able to interface with them, communicate with them the right way to help support them is not, I don't want to say it's not easy, but it's not a kind of a standard skill set that you come off the assembly line learning when they train you how to be a procurement person or a finance person or whatever it might be. So having worked in the waste industry and the regulated waste industry and learning kind of how you partner with the business to move them forward while also kind of staying compliant and, leveraging scale and all those sorts of things, just applied really, really well to what ABM was looking for.
You talked about being a center-led world-class procurement organization. Develop that vision for us. What does that look like in your mind? Explain that to us.
I would say it is different from, if you think about maybe more of a supply chain application, manufacturing, whatever it might be, you would go to maybe it's purchasing team, supply chain team, whatever it is. Hey, I need this thing. Here's the specification. They go find it. They source it. They may even buy it, right? They may even order it and do all of that. When it comes to a company like ours that's more service focused as opposed to manufacturing, a lot of the, call it decision-making, requirements, gathering, those sorts of things, lives with our business partners. So in order to, when I say center-led procurement, what that means is my team would do the contract negotiations. We would do the sourcing events. So we would run, RFPs, request for proposal process. We would do the work. We're almost like personal shoppers for the business, right? And so what we want to get is they say, I need this thing. I need it to do this, and this. I think there's 3 or 4 companies that could do it. Joe, I want you to go out, get me the best price, the best contract and all that stuff so that I can, focus on serving clients and you can handle all the contract and negotiation stuff, right? And then there's so many levels to that, right? Then where do you keep all those contracts? How do you enable the business to buy more off of those contracts that are negotiated? That's where some of the systems come in. So what it really turns into, if you think about it, is our business partners, they still ultimately own the decision, right? And in many cases, I don't get to go to them and say, you have to buy this thing. There could be certain pockets, certain commodities, categories, whatever it is, where there's more structure than others. But what that means is you have to work extremely well with them to define the requirement. If they come to you and say, I want to buy this from this person, it's, well, hold on, let's take one step back. I get that you want to buy this, but does it have to be from this person, or can we have a conversation about where that goes? So you're just thinking about that, what that means. We have 120,000 team members at ABM, not all who are obviously needing to make purchases, but I've got a team of, call it 40, that are trying to coordinate all of that and orchestrate, okay, this industry group needs it to look like this one needs it to look like this. And that happens centrally to preserve all our buying power and those kinds of things. So a lot that goes into it, but ultimately it comes back to relationships and how well you partner with your stakeholders so that they want to keep coming back to you and they don't view you as a blocker and someone that they dread calling.
So what's an example of individual growth or experience that you've gone through that shaped who you are as a leader today?
Okay. So this is one of my favorite stories. We've got a little bit of time, so we can listen to this one. So several years back, I got a new boss. So, and he was an engineer by trade. So, which is not, I realized kind of through this process, I hadn't really worked with many engineers in the past, and it's kind of a different way of thinking. And so, early on in this relationship, I was struggling to be very blunt with you, and in the sense of, I've been able to grow quickly in my career and learn a lot from the people I've worked with, and just really focus on how do I get better tomorrow than I was yesterday, and do all those sorts of things. And all of a sudden, here I was, where it felt like everything I was doing was not landing, right? It was, we got to put this piece of information together, whatever it might be. I did it, and it needed a bunch of tweaks and a bunch of iterations and all these sorts of things. And it was almost like if you've ever seen I think it's Looney Tunes with the coyote and the roadrunner, and like the coyote keeps stepping on the rake and it smacks him in the head, and then he turns around and smacks him again. It was like that. I couldn't get out of my head. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I was getting frustrated, right? And of course, I'm think, well, it couldn't be me. I mean, of course, how could I be the one that's doing something wrong, right? So there came a point where I reached out to good friend of mine, guy I've known for over 20 years, just the best friend you could have. And it's like, hey, I need your advice on this, which is not a natural thing to do, but obviously as a result of this story, I'd recommend everyone does. Like, here's what's going on, and I'm explaining the situation, and I'm doing this, and he's not understanding, and all the typical things that you hear, right? And I can see based on his body language through this conversation that, like, he's not feeling bad for Joe, right? He's not hearing this and saying, "Oh man, I'm sorry, buddy. Like, that sounds really rough. We should, let's go, get some ice cream or something." That was not the case, and so got to the end of that, and his response to me, which he loves to remind me, is I never played like real organized sports growing up, and so and to this day he loves reminding me of that because he did at a pretty high level. It's like, so you've never had a coach that will just push and push and push and even when you're responding, push again and push again and push again. I'm like, well, yeah, no, I haven't. And so his point was, maybe it's not that you can't do it or you're missing something or there's some silver bullet that you don't have. Maybe you need to keep responding. You need to stick at it. You need to listen to what he's saying, and you need to just power through it. And there's something here that you're missing, right? And so, okay, well, so now I've got a choice to make, right? Like, now do I put my friend of 20 plus years in the bucket of people that don't know what they're talking about? Or do they say, okay, maybe it is actually me that is. I said, okay, well, I'm going to basically go at this as hard as I possibly can. Every time there's a piece of feedback on something or something that was missed or whatever it is, I'm going to take that 100 miles an hour and I'm going to bring it back, right? You want me to put this here? I got that. And I'm anticipating what's coming next. I'm just like, if you've ever seen that documentary with Michael Jordan, where he has that quote where he said, it became personal for me. Like, have you ever seen that part?
Yeah.
That's like what it felt like. Like, okay, I'm going to take this and I am going to wear him down. I am not going to be the one that gives up. Right. And, it was funny. Some of the things would be around presenting information, right? And I know this is a long story, but it all comes together.
That's good. No, keep going.
And so, all right, if we're gonna pick at the grammar and things like that, I'm going to use semicolons. I'm going to put semicolons places you didn't even know existed, right? I'm going to do that. We want to call out, how do we call out information on slides? And this isn't clear. I'm going to use red circles. I'm going to use bold font. I might use italics. I might even use different color font. Who knows? Maybe something really cool you don't know about, right? Just everything I could possibly do. And it sounds silly, but over time it worked. And over time, coming out of the other side of it, I will tell you now, when it comes to things like presenting information and telling a story and using data and beginning with the end in mind, which is one of the things that was really important to this person, I do that better than most now. I would say, I know it doesn't sound right, but had I not gone through that experience, I would not have had this really, really important skill that I've now developed. So I'm super thankful for that bit of adversity, as well as for, my friend in the network to kind of help get me through it. But how that translates back to leadership is, now I have this example where, had I not had that, like I said, had I not had that experience, I would not have gone from, level 1 to level 2 or level 3 to level 4, whatever it is. So now with, having a team and all these sorts of things, how do I push them? When I see there's excellence in there and potential and all these great things, how do I push them in that, a similar vein without making them just, run screaming and change their name and, passport and never come back. Right. So it's something I think about a lot, because it's not an experience everyone's been through before, especially if it's someone that's done well and really focused on their career and those kinds of things. But it's really important. If you can unlock that talent and you can push someone to be, like I said, better tomorrow than they were yesterday, it's just the game changer.
Adversity is a great teacher, and just embracing it as such is really critical. So that's a great lesson. So I watched your keynote that you did at the Procurement and Supply Chain Live Chicago Summit. You did a great job. You talked about the invisible ledger. And so can you explain the concept, what it means, and how it applies to your world of procurement?
Yeah. So it's actually something. So I'm probably the last person on the planet that read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Great book, man. Great book.
It really is. But so it was interesting kind of going through it and applying things from the book to whether it's your professional life, personal life, whatever it is. And the big thing that jumped out to me was his concept of trust and the invisible ledger and this, the emotional bank account as the concept that he introduces. And so when I was going through that, it just kind of dawned on me, this is a big piece of kind of what I do today, right? And this is, building relationships from an indirect procurement standpoint where you have to partner with the business, all those things we talked about earlier. The only way to build those relationships, you have to give more than you take, essentially, especially early on. That's just the reality of it. So it was just something that kind of landed, and I said, okay, well, this is what we do in our space. This is how we essentially build these relationships. Is you got to invest. You got to make deposits in that emotional bank account with whoever your stakeholders are. And so it's funny now. I think it was earlier this week, someone from my team popped in and was talking about something, and she said that's a deposit, right, in the emotional bank account. So I really liked the concept. I think it's just a lot of times we focus on, how do I make this relationship better? And we just so myopic, like, what can I do right now to make this better? When in reality, that thing you did 6 months ago is what's going to pay dividends now. So how do you make sure you think about that in the future?
Procurement can kind of have a reputation for taking from vendors. You know what I mean? So how do you balance aggressive cost control with ensuring the quality and reliability that comes from having a partnership and doing that across so many categories, like philosophically, strategically? How do you balance those two things? The
relationship piece goes both ways, right? It's not just internal, it's also with our supplier partners. And so I think there's this misnomer or misconception that if you're in procurement, you can just beat everybody up, 6 ways to Sunday. And it's like, okay, well, they're in procurement, so I got to give them whatever discount I feel like giving them. That's not really how it works. So
it feels like sport sometimes.
Well, I do enjoy it. I'll be honest, I do enjoy it. But you have to. It all comes down. Unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to leverage. And it's funny. There's this thing called the Kraljic matrix. It's like I think I could spell it now, but if you ask many people to spell it, it'd be tough. And it's where you segment your suppliers. Like, which ones do I have based on the way my supply chain works or criticality in the business? Like, where do they fall? Is there a bottleneck? Like, they're one of 2 that I can buy from, and it's super important to the business performance. I might not have as much leverage there, right? But maybe if it's something like, call it business cards, there's 15 suppliers I could go to tomorrow, and business cards aren't really driving the business, whether I use vendor A, B, or supplier A, B, C, or D. Sorry, I had a leader in the past that said vendors sell hot dogs, and so we weren't supposed to say vendors, we were supposed to say suppliers, and it still sticks with me. But that's ultimately what it comes down to, is you have to understand what the leverage is that you have, and how do you play your cards the right way. And I mean, it sounds bad, but the type of relationship that you develop is going to be a result of that kind of that leverage, unfortunately. And so now that sounds, someone's going to listen and says, God, this guy's a psycho, right? He's just thinking of how much leverage, am I going to be nice to this person or not, depending on how much leverage I have. That's not the intent. But in reality, you should know, as a procurement professional, you should know before having the first conversation with any supplier, you should know the scope and the scale of everything. You should know what your alternatives are. You should know who your stakeholders are. You should know what the history is. Have we worked with them for 35 plus years? Place I worked, the marketing agency that we used, the first contract that was signed 50 years ago was like hung in the company museum. So am I really going to call them and just go, guns blazing on it? Probably not. So it's just, there's a lot of upfront work that needs to be done if you're going to be successful.
So it seems like many times the incentives can be misaligned between operations and procurement, just being on the other side of it, where operations, they want to hit a production number, and procurement, sometimes, if it's not done intelligently, it's all about reducing this line item, right? And it almost in a vacuum where, the best way to reduce that number on the line item is to upset the supplier base to the point nobody wants to work with you, right? So that'd be the extreme example. So how do great procurement departments kind of balance that? How do great companies balance that need for, because the cheapest service is never the best service is never the cheapest. You got to kind of calibrate quality and cost, and it almost seems like the operational and procurement incentives can be a little in conflict sometimes. So how do you think about that?
So the textbook answer that you would get if you hired a consultant and paid them way too much money to come in and tell you, they'd say, you need to align the goals, right? You need to align procurement goals with business goals. And that is correct. That is absolutely correct. I would say, taking it a step further, you need to have the type of relationship with the business where they understand your goals are going to be different. So one of the first categories, and I shouldn't say goals are going to be different. Ultimately, our goal is the same. We want to serve our clients. We want to grow the business. We want to promote our team members. We want to develop strong succession planning. We want to build a great company that makes the world better, than we left it, right? So you think about ABM employing 120,000 people. We are doing that, right? So we all have the same ultimate goal. What I would say is, the way this works well is, it's funny, one of the first categories I supported was marketing. There was no way I was going to go into a meeting with the marketing team and say, happy Tuesday. I'm here to try to, take as much money out of your budget as I possibly can. Like that, they would be chasing me with pitchforks through the hallway, right? Their goal is spend money to make money. My goal is save money to grow margin and invest in the business and those kinds of things. So to me, it comes down to the relationship. There has to be kind of cards on the table. We all understand, right? This is one of our goals is going to be around cost containment and those kinds of things. But how do you, as a procurement person, learn the business well enough to be able to show how your goal is going to align with theirs and actually help them in some way, right? And a lot of times, the first time that happens is with an issue. A supplier doesn't perform, something goes sideways, and you get the phone call, hey, we need help, we need a new partner, we need to do an RFP, whatever it might be. But over time, you just become a partner with them where the phone calls are more frequent and it's not always nuclear, right? It's, hey, I think we can do better here. I think we could drive a better outcome. We could raise, this score, this or that. Can you help us, take a look and see? So then all of a sudden we may find better partner, lower cost, better SLAs, stronger contract. Just so happens to cost less money than what we were doing before. And now everybody wins.
What were some of the biggest operational challenges that you faced in shifting to this center-led model?
Well,
that's a big company.
Yeah. Well, and not just a big company. It's a company that, it was one of the things that blew me away when I started here is we hire team members that are good relationship builders. Like our relationships with our clients are incredibly important. So in the same vein that I just talked about, someone calling us to help them, we want to do the same for our clients, right? We want to be that first phone call and help support them. So to come in and say, hey, we want to take a look at this or see, are there efficiencies we can gain or things we can do differently, whatever it might be, I could be taking away or potentially perceived that I'm taking away decision-making rights from folks in the business, which doesn't always go over well. And when you take that to another level and say, we're also going to pair this with improvements in our systems and processes, and we're going to use purchase orders, and we're going to have all this data and visibility to what we're spending and who we're spending it with and how often, and all these sorts of things. There is no solution I can give them that is easier than walking down the street and buying something on your credit card. I just can't. So there's no sales pitch I can give to say this is going to be better. I say, no, it's not. I give Steve $5 and I get what I need. Like, well, I don't know. What do you mean? What could be better than that? So it's a big challenge, especially when you think about field services and the type of business that we're in, or the waste industry or others. Where you can make some ground, like I said, is when you have risk. So you have partners where maybe you're heavily reliant, and if something happened with this supplier, we're in trouble. Our clients are in trouble, right? So proactively getting ahead of those, hopefully before something were to go sideways, that's one big piece that can help you break through that barrier. But then also, there are instances where we take work off of our stakeholders' plates. So when the process works well, they're coming to us and saying, this is what I need. This is what I need it to look like. This is how many. And we go. We run the process. They don't have to call and get quotes and negotiate and do all those sorts of things. So it can be done, but it all comes back to, it can't be something that's strictly based on policy and me sitting here with my yellow pad saying, this person bought 2 more than they were supposed to buy, and now they're on the naughty list. Like, that doesn't work.
Facing sudden growth or limited by traditional financing? Momentum Capital Funding empowers businesses with real-time cash flow through AR factoring. Get the funding you need and fuel your success. Visit MomentumCapitalFunding.com to learn more.
So you've expanded significantly into high-tech spaces. We mentioned like microgrids and semiconductor fabs. You've done it through recent acquisitions, Ravenvolt and
WGN Star.
WGN Star. Okay. How does moving into these technical environments change the game for you, your sourcing strategy? Or did you bring their procurement operation just into your fold? Or how do you make that shift?
Well, it depends. It certainly depends on the acquisition and what sort of infrastructure or structures in place to begin with. But I would say it starts with the client. We wouldn't be in these positions to make these moves unless we saw a clear gap as far as, we're providing all these services and performing extremely well, but there's these couple pieces that we, haven't been able to crack through and those sorts of things. So if I think about it, everything makes sense for our overall strategy. There's pockets that maybe we say we want to perform more in. If you listen to any of our earnings calls, we'll talk about semiconductor as a bullseye, right? We'll operate kind of, or historically had operated kind of in the perimeter, but there was always that middle piece that, we didn't have the right structure to tap into. Now we can with the WGN Star acquisition. So what that means from a procurement standpoint is there could be changes to things that we need to buy or expansion. There could be completely new partners that are critical, suppliers that we didn't use in the past that are parts of these new businesses. So, but ultimately the core process, what we do, the things that are important to us don't change. So just because we now need to source, some piece of equipment for a microgrid that we didn't have to previously for, maybe it's, the janitorial business or something like that. That doesn't change the way we partner with our stakeholders. That doesn't change the way that we run our RFPs. It might change what's in there, and it might change the negotiation strategy based on, like we talked about before, how many suppliers and all those sorts of things. But if you operate the right way, bring it on, right? We could acquire another 5 companies tomorrow, and we'd bring them into the fold, and we'd support them the same way we do the core business.
So you've had a heck of a run. You've seen a lot. What have you changed your mind on in recent years?
Maybe it's not changing my mind. Maybe it was more of a, I don't know if it was an acceptance or a humble, I don't know the right word, but earlier in my career, there were a lot of things that if it went too far sideways, I could fix it myself. Or if something wasn't working, the information wasn't coming together the right way, I could fix it, right? And at a certain point, I would say maybe I always believed that, right? No matter what, and no matter how the team's performing or deadlines shifting or priorities or whatever it is, I'll always be able to. One of my team members calls it Joeing it, which is just, it's, I don't know if I love it or hate it, but I've always thought I'd have that ability kind of to be the safety net and do some things. One of the things I've learned, and I guess you could say changed your mind on, is that approach, especially from a leadership standpoint, not only does it not work, it's not necessarily possible, but it's detrimental to your team members. So, I mean, there should be an environment where I want someone going to a meeting with the ELT without me, right? I mean, depending on if I'm invited or supposed to be there, of course, right? I would never ditch the meeting, but that's been a kind of a big shift for me. Is how can I do more work up front instead of being the last approval group to say, okay, well, let me make this tweak and do this and do this. How can I do more work up front? How can I just share everything I have to share and then say, all right, it's yours, go, and kind of get comfortable with that. I'm sure many go through that, but that was a mindset shift.
Yeah, we all come to the end of ourselves at some point, no matter how strong we think we are. There is an edge. There is an edge out there somewhere. That's good. And you're 100% right. Just the impact on your team is we're taking that opportunity from somebody else to step up and grow and take something on. So yeah, that's good. What's your best advice that you would give up and coming procurement leaders? Maybe somebody earlier in their career trying to rise up in the ranks like you have.
I would say, well, not specifically for procurement folks, but just in general. One of the things I did earlier on was, it sounds silly, but pay attention. So we had, I was part of a 88-person procurement team when I was at Allstate, and we used to do every month. They were called commodity manager presentations. So someone that managed a category of spend would get up in front of the entire department and they would present. So it would be, here's my strategy. These are my big suppliers. This is what I'm working on. This is where the business is going. And it was great development and all those sorts of things. But you had 87 people in the audience, if you will, right? And so you could watch, you could see, what is this person doing that's landing well? And, are people nodding their heads? Are people falling asleep? This was early kind of cell phone, iPhone days. So, you didn't have people scrolling TikTok or whatever, So, but you could see, like, man, this person is engaging. Everybody's nodding their heads. People are leaning forward. What are they doing? Why is this working so well? How do I do what they're doing? Right. Or if it was just falling flat and you could read the room and it wasn't working, how do I not do whatever's happening? That was kind of my first exposure to kind of that sort of thing. And so now I try to do that as much as I can. You're in a meeting. Maybe it's not an 88-person meeting, but someone's doing well, someone's not doing so well. They're getting a lot of questions. There's, whatever it might be. Pay attention. Just make the mental note, make the physical note if you need to. Reminder, Steve does not like small talk. Maybe don't ask Steve about his weekend, or whatever it might be. But just paying attention and trying to learn from the best is hugely powerful. Specifically for procurement, I would say there are going to be macro trends that may or may not apply to your business. You should try to stay in the loop on it as best you can. I just think back to COVID times, and I would get a phone call, 7 a.m. from my boss, like, hey, did you see the longshoremen are on strike? And it's like, yeah, okay. Yeah. So is that going to affect us? Like, no, we buy stuff from Kansas City. Right. So, but if you want to, grow and develop, you kind of have to know what's happening in the world. How might that affect both our supply chain as well as, impact our clients? And then, like I talked about in the Procurement Magazine conference, that relationships are everything. Could you be a person who has a reputation of just, you're the cost cutter, you're someone they can call in and take 10% out of everything and, burn the boats on the way out? Sure. Could you build a strong career out of that? Probably. But it's going to be a career of probably 18-month stints or whatever it might be. And you might not build a network of folks that say, yeah, that's someone I want to partner with again in the future. So relationships are everything.
Yeah, that's good. Where do you go to stay up on things now? Books, podcasts, blogs that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I have a long drive to and from the office. So we'll be some audiobooks once in a while, podcasts, things like that. I will say AI has been incredible. I know it's all the rage, right? But just how can I learn about something quickly or make a connection between, I see this is happening. Does that impact me? Does it not? Could it impact me? How might this show up in a contract, in a proposal? That's been incredibly powerful. But it's kind of just a combination of everything, as well as, you'll get the questions, right? Internally, someone will see something on the news, they will ask. And that's how, kind of stay in the loop.
Yeah, good. Well, how can folks connect with you, connect with ABM, maybe for opportunities, career opportunities, that sort of thing? What's the best way to do that? We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. So best way to connect with me would be, I think, through LinkedIn, obviously, is a great one. Would love to connect with anyone. That is, I will say, from a networking standpoint, I use that a ton, whether we're recruiting or I hear, someone's looking for someone and how can I connect, people to talk. So LinkedIn's a great one. My direct email, so a great way to reach out. We can put that in the show notes for folks. And then ABM, we've got, through our website, there's ways to reach out to us and connect about potential solutions and things like that. And what I would say, just for any procurement folks that may be listening to this, facility services is one of the messiest from a number of suppliers, number of invoices. I'm paying $15 invoice here for that and $120 invoice here. And there's so many invoices, so many suppliers. That is one space. If you're kind of in that mode where you're thinking, should I be consolidating? Is this really something I should look into? Give us a call, because like I said, our performance solutions business, where we aggregate all that, you're getting one invoice instead of, who knows how many. Just a real win, drives cost savings, which obviously every procurement person is very excited about.
Gotta love it. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Joe. It's been really insightful, and I appreciate. I don't know that I've had a chief procurement officer on, so it was good to get your perspective.
Honored to be the first.
Yeah. That was great. Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep it real. Thank you for listening. This podcast is powered by Onin, the staffing partner delivering real results for manufacturing, logistics, and food processing companies nationwide. To learn more, visit www.oningroup.com. Until next time, keep it real.